In this async and await exercise, we will go through one code snippet and we will try to predict the output. And if there are any issues, we will fix those as well. So look at this code snippet and try to predict the output. And if there are any issues, try to figure out what are those. So pause here for a minute and then we will go through it. Okay, so let's try to read this code snippet. So at line number 1, we are defining a async function. So async keyword means that the function would return a promise. So I would write it down. Async means that this function would return a promise. Now we are not explicitly returning a promise within that function. So this function would return a resolved promise. Resolved promise with the value of math.random. So every time this code will run, it will generate a random value. Random. Let's look at this function now. Again, this is asynchronous function, so this would return a promise. If you find async keyword on a function, then it means that this function would return a promise. So here we are returning get random value. So we are calling this async function, which would return a resolved promise. And then we are invoking then on it. So since this returns a resolved promise, it would go inside this then. And from this then, we are throwing an error and we are passing get random value object in it. And get random value is a promise. And this await means that it will wait here till this entire block, I'll use another color here. So this entire block is completed. The execution of this entire block is completed. Now let's look at this. This execute function is calling get value, and then if it returns a resolved promise, then it would go inside then. If it returns an error, it would go inside here. So in case of resolve, and in case of error, it would come here. And finally, we are invoking this execute function. So this execute function would call get value, and then this get value is calling this get random value, and then it's throwing an error with an object. So since it's returning an object, we would see error, and then we would see a promise here. Now we will not see the math.random value because we are not waiting for this to be resolved. We are directly passing this promise object here. So what we will need to do is, if we pass, or if we write, I will use another color, purple. Okay, so if I write await get random value, then this would return error and a math.random value. So something like 0 point something 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 something. So it is very important that you use await properly in your code. Otherwise, you will run into such kind of weird bugs. So as you can see here, without await at line number 7, line number 14 would print error and a promise object. And if we use await at line number 7, line number 14 would print console.log error and a value returned by math.random.